Hello, all. Today we will learn about a very popular poem of Robert Frost, an American poet, Birches. Before we discuss the poem, let's know something about the author. Robert Lee Frost, born on 26th March in the year 1874, was an American poet. His work was initially published in England before it was published in America. He is highly regarded for his realistic depiction of rural life and his command of American colloquial speech. Frost was honored frequently during his lifetime, receiving 4 Pulitzer Prizes for poetry. He became one of America's rare public literary figures, almost an artistic institution. He was awarded the Congressional Gold Medal in the year 1960 for his poetical works. So, his poetic style can be described as conversational, realistic, rural, and introspective. Some of the most famous poems of Robert Frost are The Gift Outright, Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening, Birches, Bending Wall, The Road Not Taken, Nothing Gold Can Stay. Frost died in Boston on January 29, 1963, of complications post surgery. He was buried at the Old Bennington Cemetery in Bennington. His epitaph quotes the last line from one of his poems. The lesson for today: I had a lover's quarrel with the world. Birches is a wisdom laden poem which was a part of a collection titled Mountain Interval, published in the year 1916. The poem describes the simple act of swinging the birch trees, a common sport among children in rural New England where Frost spent his childhood. The swinging of birches is used as a distraction, a pastime to busy oneself in order to escape the realities and hardships of the adult life. Written in blank verse and composed in a charmingly conversational tone, the poem revolves around the themes of the nature of truth, the relation between fact and fiction, revisiting one's childhood, and the balance between life and art, which must be maintained for a meaningful life. Birches are given a human treatment in this poem, and the manner in which they weather the climatic condition is symbolic of the various challenges which the adult life is fraught with. The poet wishes to be able to revisit the childhood experience of swinging the birches in order to get a momentary respite from the adult world. When the speaker sees bent birch trees, he likes to think that they are bent because boys have been swinging them. He knows that they are in fact bent by ice storms, yet he prefers his vision of a boy climbing a tree carefully and then swinging at the tree's crest to the ground. He used to do this himself and dreams of going back to those days. He likens birch swinging to getting away from the earth for a while and then coming back. So, as you notice, the title of the poem is Birches, but the actual subject that is dealt is birch swinging. And the theme of the poem seems to be more generally and more deeply about this motion and the act of swinging birches, or in general swinging. The force behind it comes from contrary pulls, truth and imagination, earth and heaven, concrete and spirit, control and abandon, flight and return. So, as you read the poem, you can get to see the contraries presented by the poet in the poem. We have the earth below, we have the world of the treetops and above, And we have the motion between these two poles. The poem opens with a sight of curiously bent birch trees or birches. So, as you notice, having known that's because of the ice storm, the poet is deliberately trying to imagine that some children must have bent them by swinging on them. So he knows it isn't the work of a harmless boy. It's the ice storms, harsh, cold, and ruthless. The boy and the ice storm both are explanations for the truth behind the state of the bent birches. One is the objective, fact based explanation which states that which is. The other is subjective explanation based on fantasy which creates a possibility of that which can be. So, the use of contrast is seen throughout the poem, like black white, heaven earth, ideal real, truth, fantasy, heat, cold, old age, adolescence, fact, fiction. So the list goes on. So from the sixth line onwards, the poem now switches to the second person as the speaker addresses the reader, you, while referring to the birches to delve into the human condition. We are told that some circumstances merely swing them and others bring them down forever. A highly sensory language is used to describe a matter of fact event, the process of the freezing and thawing of ice. Notice the use of a host of literary devices to capture the reality of the season winter. The stanza abounds in alliteration. Cracks crazed. What is alliteration? Perhaps you can go back and have a look at the previous videos where I discussed about this technical term or literary device, figure of speech alliteration. So we notice a an ornate poetic language is used to describe a scientific phenomenon. The literal gives way to the figurative. Art makes the reality of the thawing ice more real. The fallen dome of heaven is a reference to the long discarded model of universe which held that the planets are enclosed in spheres or domes. The dome of this heaven has indeed fallen. What was held to be real for ages, like the ancient theory, is real no more, and what isn't real but a fiction description of the melting ice becomes more real than reality itself. So, at times, when the poet feels laden by the realities of life, when he is in a state of chaos or going through some turmoil, he desires that the harsh truths about the real world should be taken away, at least for some time. So he prefers the truth to be like a birch tree that might be bent by some boy, a boy who was too far from the town to learn baseball and whose only play was what he found. This was how the poet personally brings or recollects his childhood days and how he used to subdue the trees that he was able to climb. So the opposition of fact versus fantasy resurfaces in these lines when truth breaks in a matter of fact manner. He prefers it to be the workings of a boy instead of the ice storm. The truth of the boy swinging the birches serves as an antidote to the matter of fact truth of the ice storms because the truth of the former leaves scope for dealing with reality through imagination, whereas the latter demands the acceptance of an open truth or a fact. There is no more to it than what it is. So gradually the speaker conquered all of his father's trees as a boy, which being young and tender couldn't help but yield to the boy's will. So the language employed while describing the scene is wrought with violence. Considering the fact that this poem was published during World War one might be tempted to draw a link between the text and the event. However, making such speculation isn't feasible as it doesn't complement the thematic concern of the poem. So, in the lines 21 to 29, the nostalgia of childhood provides a brief escape to the speaker from the rigors of the adult life, from the hardships of adulthood. The manner in which he used to climb the tree is vividly captured in these lines. After learning to climb carefully with the same pains as one uses to fill the cup up to the brim and even above the brim, he'd fling himself kicking his way down through the air to the ground. A lot like building one's life carefully around a certain truth only to fling oneself clear of it. There is a limit to what a cup can hold, and there is a limit to which the boy can climb the tree. He must come down some day. So the boy's act of climbing the birches creates a slight tension. There is both leisure and danger involved. It's risky as well. Uncertainty prevails. Climbing the right height is crucial for the act. Too little height won't help him launch, and too great a height will definitely jeopardize the safety of the boy. So he needs to learn how to climb cautiously, carefully, and he should know how to launch himself, not too soon, not too late. In short, he has to learn when to hold on and when to let go of. So, maintaining this balance is of great importance in life. So, when you look at the lines 30 to 39, the speaker can't help but yearn to escape from the adult life. He wishes to be the boy again, who used to spend his leisure time with the birches. The imagery of the pathless wood is used to describe life's complexity and the difficulty in getting around, finding a way out. So one is made to find one's way in the pathless wood. So many a times that which limits us may be the very thing that sets us free. So let's have a look at the lines 40 to 50, where the poet makes it clear that neither he is an escapist nor he's trying to talk about escapism to get away from the realities, rigors of life, which demand one to be more responsible towards duty and that expects one to take risk as well. Rather, what he third emphasizes is a brief respite from the harsh realities of existence. This he explicitly states in the lines, "Earth's the right place for love. I don't know where it's likely to get better." So the poet wants to briefly escape the harsh realities of life by climbing a birch tree and momentarily transcend the monotony of life. The moment the speaker launches from the birches is when he can shed the cobwebs of everyday existence, that is, the troubles, worries, responsibilities, the hardships. So, this moment of ecstasy while launching isn't just a physical thrill, it's also described as an act of aiming at something beyond oneself and momentarily transcending the self. It is an imaginative and creative act. But this moment is a fleeting one as life's responsibilities cannot be avoided altogether. So there is a limit to this act. The birches swing upon oneself up momentarily and the ground pulls one down. The leap of imagination must also yield to the conditions of reality. Imagination cannot exist outside the real world. So the boy must land on the ground. The swishing in the air must happen with the aid of the birch tree, and the birch must always be rooted to the ground for him to make that launch. Always. Naturally, the speaker can't help but wish to return to earth. Perhaps he desires to go beyond the black and white categorization of truth, and he wants to restart with rejuvenated spirit after taking a brief respite. So, as you have noticed, this poem is quite rich and there is no shortage of interpretations. The poem is lovely at the literal level and at the figurative level as well. The important thing for the interpreter, the one who analyzes, is to attune reading to the elements of the poem that may suggest other meanings. So, unless one is able to appreciate the symbolic, figurative meaning, he or she may not be able to appreciate the message that Robert Frost wanted to convey. So, one such crucial element is the motion between opposites. Look at the contrast that he has presented throughout the poem. At the same time, in spite of talking about the hardships, how he yearns to take a quick break or temporary respite, he emphasizes earth is the best place to live, to spread love, to live with harmony. And he wants to come back after a momentary relief.